Looks like we're all set up there. So thank you, Brian. Thank you all here for your patience as we're getting things rolling there. Thanks for coming tonight. We have Nancy Dunn with us tonight from College Now. This is a company out of Cleveland that we've been contracting with for, boy, it's probably been 15 years now. We've been with College Now, and our normal rep is Dr. Gates, who is away this weekend at a wedding. Actually, hope she's okay with me saying that. So Nancy, who actually gave our presentation last year as well, came in to give this presentation. This comes to us from the Highland Foundation. They fund this year in and year out through a grant that we write here and through the support of people in the community. So if you get a chance to somehow support the Highland Foundation, we appreciate that. This is just one of the many ways that they help the students here in the Highland schools, grades K through 12. They do quite a bit, and it's just hundreds of thousands of dollars every year going right to the students and projects and learning experiences that they just wouldn't get otherwise. So we're very appreciative to them. As I said there earlier, if you have a chance to remind your son or daughter to check their email and to schedule that meeting with us, we find that people, I understand, are busy and we don't always check our email, but during that senior year especially, if they could, routinely check that email, that'd be great. The handouts, I think we ran out back there. This is a good crowd, so thank you for that. We're going to get electronic copies of those and post them to the hls.media website along with this presentation. So that'll be something that we hope to get up, we'll say by Monday. I guess it'll be up sooner than that. But if you check there, also that parent meeting is there from before, and we'll have our meetings posted there throughout the year. So that's been a nice kind of addition to these parent meetings. Tomorrow night's football game band performance over there, and thanks to Brian and his group as well. That'll be on hls.media live. So thank them for that. You get to see the football players and then the bands at halftime. So a way to kind of showcase some of our students and what they do. So very nice there as well. And I'm not sure who's sponsoring this one. Might be Brian. I think Brian's just writing this right out of his checkbook, but we had some local companies that kind of ponied up for that last week, so we appreciate that. And I'm sure it'll get covered somehow by tomorrow night. But all right, we'll try to keep this to a little less than an hour. I know there's a volleyball game, there's conferences. I'm sure you have baseball, soccer, lacrosse, all that other stuff going on as well. But I'll turn this over to Nancy here, and at the end, you'll be able to stick around if you need help with the FSAID. Nancy will be able to help you with that. And a lot of changes this year with the FAFSA, so nothing to be nervous about, I don't think, but definitely different if you've had sons or daughters or people in the past that you've done this with. Little different this year, so I'll let Nancy explain all that.
Hi, if you could make sure that you register your attendance either by using this QR code or if you signed in on the table outside, that works too, either one of those ways. As Jim said, Dr. Ann Gates is your advisor. She is at a wedding today, but that is her contact information. That is her work phone number as well as her email address. And then you can also use that link at the bottom, the appointments link, to book an appointment directly with her. Now we're going to find out if the fun clicker works. Yay. Okay, so these are the things that we're going to go over tonight. We're going to go over basically the understanding what financial aid is and the process for obtaining it. We're going to talk about the different types of financial aid, and we're going to talk about the FAFSA. And there are lots of changes to the FAFSA this year. So if you have recently done the FAFSA for an older child, or perhaps for yourself if you've gone back to college in the last few years, it looks entirely different this year. It's completely new. We'll talk about that. We're also going to talk about the CSS profile. That's a different financial aid form that some colleges use, but not all of them do. So we'll talk about that. And then finally, we're going to make sure that you understand what happens after you complete the FAFSA. So I want to begin by talking about the value of college, just because we know college is expensive. I literally sat in your seats last year. My daughter is a first year student at Kenyon. So I not only lived this as an advisor working with families, I also lived it as a parent, completing the FAFSA, completing the CSS profile, trying to make sure that we had enough money to send her to college. So it's really important to make sure that you understand that the value, the expense is real, but don't be afraid by that sticker price. Almost no one pays the sticker price for college. It's kind of a big shock when you look at it and you see that in Ohio State's cost of attendance, if you're going to Ohio State Columbus campus, is approximately $30,000 per year. That's a lot of money. But we know that over the lifetime of a student who attends a four-year college or a two-year college, graduates, and goes on to get a great job, that over the lifetime of that, the student will definitely make a great living and earn money to pay back their loans if they have to take those out, or basically it's also the networking that they can make to meet people, to get great jobs and internships and things like that. There's a lot to college. And when we at College Now talk about college, we mean more than just a four-year college. We're talking about two-year colleges. We also are talking about places where students can go to learn about trades and earn those certificates and things like that. So we help with all of that. The trade schools also take the FAFSA. So we want to make sure that families understand all of their options for any kind of post-secondary education after high school. So if you have any questions about that, you can certainly talk to Dr. Gates. So what are the costs associated with attending a four-year college, which most people think about when they're thinking of college? Cost of attendance incorporates more than just the tuition and fees. It also includes the room and board. Those are considered direct costs. Those are things that the college will directly bill you as a parent or bill the student. The indirect costs are also included in the cost of attendance, and those are things like the personal expenses, the books, the supplies, thinking about transportation to and from college, depending on where you go to college, including that transportation cost while you're there, if you take your car or if you're going to college in a larger city where there's public transportation. You know, we want students to learn how to budget, so we want students to think about all of that. And when the colleges send out their financial aid award letters, or you're looking online at their websites, they're giving you the average cost of attendance for all students who attend that college. So we know that they'll give you a basic price for books. It may not cost you that much money, or it may cost you more. Personal expenses include things like toiletries and the snacks that you want to have in your dorm room, and going out to the movies with friends, or going to a concert on the weekends. So some students are going to obviously spend more on that. Some will spend less. So when you're making that budget, you want to include all of those items under personal expenses. So when we talk about financial aid, we're talking about all of the financial aid, all of the money that students can get to help them to go to college. It can be lots of different things. We're going to talk about all the different kinds. Some financial aid is free. We like that kind. Those are scholarships and grants, things you don't have to pay back. Some of it is not free. Those are the loans that some students end up taking out. But we know that with financial aid, it all goes to help to pay for the cost of attendance at college. You can't just keep the money. You can't get a scholarship and put it in your bank account and save it and not use it for college. You have to use it for college. So there's basically three types of financial aid. There's the gift money, the grants and scholarships, the free money, the money that we all like. Then there's the earned money, which students can get through either a federal work study or a job on campus or a job off campus, depending on where they are. And then there's the borrowed money, the loans that they might have to take out. So grants are need-based. This is money that students can receive from either the federal or the state government based on their financial need. And that is why the FAFSA is important, because it helps the government to see who needs that financial aid, that type of financial aid. They do not need to be repaid, and the Pell Grant, the one that we hear about the most, that is just one type grant. The state of Ohio has a grant that students who, if you're eligible for the Pell Grant, then you can be eligible for the Ohio OCOG grant too. Gift money also includes scholarships, which we want students to know that they should apply for as many scholarships as possible. There are lots of websites out there where students can research scholarships. You can look at the College Board website. They have a great scholarship search tool. We have a scholarship search tool on the College Now website. There's others out there as well. But scholarships can be either merit-based, need-based, or special circumstance-based. So merit-based is a scholarship a student might win based on their academic endeavors, or they might win a merit-based scholarship because they're a great athlete. There's a lot of different types of merit-based scholarships students can receive based on what your skills, gifts, and abilities are. Need-based scholarships are ones that are going to want to know that the student is in financial need, and they'll ask probably to see a copy of the student's FAFSA results. To see if a student qualifies. Those are usually income-based. They'll tell you, sometimes they'll have a basic income level that they will say families that earn this much or less can apply. There's also circumstance-based. There are students who have experienced certain things in their life, who may have certain diagnosed illnesses or diseases, or be a student who may have lost a parent due to being a veteran, or things, being overseas in the war, things like that. Those are special scholarships that do exist that students can apply for. Then there's all kinds of scholarships. There's scholarships for students who, if you are 6'4" and male, then you can apply, or 5'10" and female and taller, then you can apply to win a Tall People's Scholarship. There's scholarships for people who have red hair. There are scholarships for people who are left-handed. There are all kinds of scholarships out there. That's why those database tools are useful, because you can search and find things. The more you search and the more you apply for, the better. I once had a student who came to me during his study hall every day, sat in my office, and applied for over 50 scholarships during his senior year. He won 25 of them. And that ended up being a good chunk of change. Some of them were only $500, some of them were $2,000. So all of that added up to a great amount for him. So it is like a part-time job, and I know your seniors are already stressed. So but look at it as another way that you can earn some money to help go to college. So we want you to think specific, we want you to think easy, and we want you to think local. It is a lot easier to win a local scholarship than it is to win one of the national scholarships. So I know the Highland Foundation, here in Highland, you have some scholarships that are specifically offered to just Highland students. Make sure you apply for those. If you qualify to apply for a College Now scholarship, please apply for that. Think about where you work. Think about where you worship. Think about any clubs that you as a student are a part of, or that your family is a part of. There are all kinds of different scholarships out there. So it's worth it to spend a little time doing the research. So earned money is basically exactly what it sounds like. When you complete the FAFSA, one of the questions will be, would you like to be considered for work study? I always say select yes. It gives you the option when you get to college to apply for a work-study job on campus. If you select no, you're not giving yourself that option. So select yes, apply for work to be a part of work-study. Filling out the FAFSA is that application to be eligible for work-study money on campus. If you're not eligible for work-study money, you can still get a job on campus. Always talk to your the Career Services Center at whatever college you end up at. They can help you get a job. If you are going to a college, where you have options to work off campus, or if you already have a job and maybe you can transfer that to the same company or the same place where you are going to school, that's great. Working while you're in school is another way to earn money to help pay for school. Oops. So borrowed money is the one that no one really wants to talk about. It's the one that we don't really like, but it is always an option. Filling out the FAFSA is the application to be eligible for federal student loans. So if you don't want to fill out the FAFSA because you don't want, for whatever reason, just know that if your student needs to take out student loans, then filling out the FAFSA is the only way they will be eligible to take out federal student loans. So federal student loan repayment has started. If you need help and support with that, please talk to us at College Now. We can direct you to our adult services programs. They can help you get back on board with your federal loan repayment plan if you need that help too. But the federal student loans, there's basically two types of student loans, the subsidized and the unsubsidized. The interest rate for that is set each year in July. So currently for students who are in college right now, if they took out a loan this year, it's a 5.5 interest rate. The Federal Parent Plus loan is a separate loan that is eligible, that parents are eligible for. Filling out the FAFSA is how you become eligible for this as well. So with the students are only able to take out their freshman year, their first year in college, $5,500 in federal student loan money. So if the cost of college is more than that and you need additional monies, parents can take out a student loan in the parent's name. Then the parents are the ones responsible for paying it back, not the student. That's an important thing to remember. If you qualify, if one college on their award letter tells you as a parent that you're eligible for a Parent Plus loan, then you're eligible to take out a Parent Plus loan from any other college. Any other college can give you access to that money. You're not taking it out from the college, you're taking it out from the federal government. If those are not options for you, or you still need additional money and you need to take out another type of loan, there are private loans that you can take out. There's a lot of companies out there that do that. We don't really endorse any of those companies. We want you to do your research. Always start with your local bank first if you need to talk to someone about a loan for college. There is one agency, nonprofit agency in the greater Cleveland area that we do recommend talking to, and that is called HFLA. And their website is interestfree.org. It is an organization that was started by a Jewish community a very, very, very long time ago. It is open up to anyone of any religious belief or non-religious belief. But they do a interest-free loan. There's a certain amount of money that you're eligible for each school year. The student can borrow it, and as long as they're doing a monthly payment of at least $100, it might be a little bit more than that now, but the last time I heard it was around $100 a month, then the loan is interest-free, which is very helpful. But they do have limits on how much a student or a family can borrow for an educational purpose. So that's worth looking into if you need it. So if you're wondering, we're going to get to the FAFSA in a minute, but if you're wondering what your FAFSA results might be before the FAFSA opens, You can go on studentaid.gov. That is the one website where you need to go for all federal student loan and all federal student aid information. Your federal student loans are housed there. The FAFSA is housed there. Everything is under studentaid.gov. They have what's called a student aid estimator. It is much shorter than the FAFSA, but it uses mostly the same information. You're hand entering in some numbers, but in about 5 to 10 minutes, you can have an estimate of what you might be eligible for once the FAFSA is completed. Also, every college is required to have on their website something called a net price calculator. Some of them will ask you a lot of questions. Every net price calculator is a little bit different, but they'll take your information, and through that net price calculator, they will be able to give you an estimated cost of attendance for your student of what that final price might be. So they'll take the sticker shock value, then they'll use the information you give them, and then they'll give you what the actual price will be for your student that year. Okay, so we're going to talk about the FAFSA for a minute. It is housed on studentaid.gov, and it sort of looks like that. That's where you'll go to start it. What you need to know is that it is free. That is the big thing. It stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. There are people in this world who like to scam us. We all know that. Do not let anyone tell you or charge you to fill out the FAFSA. Don't let them tell you that they can help you if you give them money. We can help you for free. That is what we are here for. We want to make sure that you do this for free. So studentaid.gov, and you'll fill it out there. It is from the Department of Education and Federal Student Aid. It is completed every single year your student is in school. So for the first 4 to 5 years while your student is an undergrad, you as a parent will be involved in helping with them with that. Once they graduate, and if they go on to graduate school, they can continue to fill out the FAFSA for federal student aid, and then it'll be all on them. Parents, you don't have to be involved with that process. So as you've heard, there are changes to the FAFSA. The biggest change, in my opinion, there's a lot of big changes. My favorite change is that it is moving from a computer operating system that was probably built in the 1990s, maybe early 2000s, if I'm being generous, to a brand new computer operating system. So it looks different, it feels different, it moves faster. We're hoping it doesn't crash. But yeah, it's going to be great. Will open sometime in December. I wish I could give you the exact date. They are still in the process of making changes, updating, making sure that everything works, which is why it's not opening on October 1, but they promise us that it will open by December 31. So if y'all want to do a little, betting tool between yourselves, that's fine. But we don't know when it's going to open. I would put my money on December 31st, but we don't know. It could open earlier than that, but it could open as late as December 31. With that information, know that Dr. Gates will be here a lot during January, February, and March to be able to assist you with filling this out if you need assistance. And we do want you to come to us and ask for help if you need it. We're here to help you with that. There are supposed to be fewer questions. It's supposed to be fewer questions. It used to be over 100, and now they say it's going to be about 36 questions, but those 36 questions can have different parts. But it's still going to be shorter. It should only take us about 45 minutes when you're doing it all together. There's some more income that they used to ask about that's now excluded. So some things about your pension plans or retirement plans that used to ask how much money you had come out of your check every time you got paid, that's no longer being asked. The FSA ID will be required to start, and every person who is involved in filling out the FAFSA will have to get an FSA ID. We'll talk about that in just a second. The number of students, this is the big one. If you have more than one student enrolled in college, what they used to do is once you filled out the FAFSA and got something called an EFC, they would take that and divide it by the number of students your family had in college, which would then lower your EFC and potentially make you Pell eligible. They're no longer doing that. There's a lot of reasons. It's a federal government thing, so talk to your congressperson if you're concerned about that. But we can't change that. So that's just the way it is for at least this year. Students will need to invite contributors, their parents, to fill out the form. We'll talk about that process in a minute. Contributors will have to give consent. This is the big one. Used to, as you were filling out the FAFSA, you would get to the page where it would ask you to start putting in your financial information, and it would ask you if you wanted to connect to the IRS to bring over your financial information. It is no longer an option. You must give consent to connect to the IRS to bring over your information. So that's one of the changes. We'll talk about that in a little bit more in a minute. The student aid index is what the new number is that you're looking for when you finish your FAFSA. It's no longer called the EFC, expected family contribution. It is called the student aid index. And there's a lot of reasons why that changed, because some parents would see that number and be like, okay, I don't have to pay anything to go to college because my EFC is 0. Well, no, that's not the case. Or, oh, wow, I got an EFC of like 35,000. Am I going to have to pay that to go to college? Well, that might not necessarily be the case either. So now they're calling it an SAI. It's a student aid index. And we used to get this lovely report called a student aid report, the SAR. Well, nope, they've changed that. It looks different and is now called the FSS, or the FAFSA Submission Summary. So here's what you need to complete the FAFSA. And this is on some of those handouts that you received. And if you didn't receive a handout, we will make sure that you get the digital copy of it as well. You're going to want to make sure that you have your FSA ID for both the student and the parents, or if it's a step parent who's involved, it will be the parent and step parent. You'll need tax returns for both the student and the parents and step parents, anyone who is contributing information to the FAFSA. You're going to need the amount of child support received in the past year. You no longer have to report how much you pay out for child support if that applies to you, but now you do have to put in how much you received if that applies to you. You're going to want all the asset information, the value of cash, check, and savings account as of the day that you are filling out the form. If you just got paid, if you're filling it out like on the same day as you get paid, put in the number of what you usually have once you pay out all your bills for that month. That's the number they want. They want to know how much you typically have. The net worth of investments. And this year, if you own a small business, it doesn't matter how many employees you have, or if you own a family farm, that the net worth of that small business or that or the family farm has to be reported on the FAFSA as well. That's one of the big changes that some of us are not happy about, but it is what it is. You have to list any federal benefits that you received, and of course the student will list on the student section the names of the colleges that they are applying to. It used to be that you were only limited to 10. Now students can list up to 20. Please don't apply to more than 20 colleges. Do your research. Okay, so we're going to talk about the process. The first thing you need to do is to make sure that the student and the parent, both parents, or if a parent and a step parent, that you have those FSA IDs. That is vitally important. Some aid is awarded on a first come, first served basis. So you do want to make sure that you file the FAFSA, I would say no later than February 15th, just because I know that Ohio State has set February 15th as their deadline for priorities for scholarships. That's one thing you want to do is look at what your colleges, when they want it by for priority for scholarships. So from the time that it opens to February 15th, make sure you get it done. That will make sure that you're eligible for as much financial aid as you are as possible. So it typically opens on October 1, but it's going to open up in December. We talked about that. But the FSA ID is the most important thing at the moment. So to create an FSA ID, the students and parents have to do this. This is something you also do on studentaid.gov. You'll go to create an account, or you can go to that exact website, FSA-ID, create an account launch. And it'll pull up a page that looks like this. And you'll need to have your social security number. You'll need to have your full name as it appears on your social security card and your date of birth. You will also need to create a memorable username and password because this will follow you around for the rest of your life. Parents, if you took out student loans or filled out a FAFSA and created an FSA ID a long time ago, like 10, 15 years ago, and you used what was called a PIN number at that time, hopefully you remember your PIN number. If not, we can help you recover it with FSA's help because that is the exact same username that you're going to be using for this. Like I said, make sure that you record this information in a secure location and you will be using this forever. It will have you complete challenge questions and answers, and all of this is actually on one of those handouts that you may or may not have, but we'll make sure you get a copy of. Yes. Yes. So if you have a child, a person who's already in college, or you filled out a FAFSA in the last however long it's been on the internet, and you created an FSA ID for you, the parent, that is the same FSA ID that you will use now. Your student will need their own FSA ID. So the question yes. Did you do it on paper? I never guess, but if you did it, okay. If you filled it out on paper, then it's not that kind of pen. You'll be fine. You'll want to create your own FSA ID now. The PIN number, PIN, PIN number. If you've used a PIN number, I know that when my husband went back for a master's degree in about 2005, 6, 7, somewhere around there, he filled out a FAFSA at that point, and he used a PIN number. So when we started this process for our kid, we had to find the PIN number. Luckily, he used something that he always remembers, but I've had parents who have not done that. So we've had to be able to go back in, call FAFSA, FSA, they helped us out, got us logged in. So you can get back into your FSA ID account. So for students who have married parents, we want both parents to get an FSA ID because if you filed your taxes jointly, only one parent will need to fill out the FAFSA with you. However, if you're student of married parents who file taxes separately, then now both parents will have a section that they need to finish on the FAFSA. If the parents are divorced but remarried, the same applies. So whichever parent ends up being the parent that goes on the FAFSA, then the parent and the step parent will need to provide their financial information. Yes. That's okay. All of that's changed. We'll get there. That's a good question. We'll get there. If your parents don't live together because, or parents living together, so parents information for both parents are provided. Parents not living together, it's this year, it's It doesn't have to do anything with which parent claims you on their taxes if your parents are divorced or separated. It has nothing to do with which parent claims the student on their taxes. And it doesn't have anything to do with which parent the student lives with. It wants you to examine the financial giving, the financial spending that you do, both parents do for the student, and determine which one supports the child more financially. That's the parent that they want to complete the FAFSA. So it doesn't matter who claims you on your taxes, doesn't matter who you live with, it's which parent provides more financial support for you, and that's the parent that goes on the FAFSA. The following people are not your parent unless they have legally adopted you. Okay? So, widowed step-parent. Unless the widowed step-parent has legally adopted you, you do not need to, you're going to be an independent student. Yes. Adoption over the age of 13 is also exempt. That is the one adoption that is exempt. No, you're fine. Okay. Grandparents, if grandparents are raising a student, unless they've adopted the student, then they don't need to put their financial information on the form. Foster parents do not need to put their financial information on the form. Legal guardians who have not adopted the student do not have to put their information on the form. You're going to want to find your legal guardianship papers to prove that and have that with you. If the college asks for it, but you don't have to put your financial information on the form. Older brothers and sisters who may have custody of a sibling, that does not go on the form. Aunts and uncles who may have custody, they do not go on the form. And from henceforth, all parents will be known as contributors on the FAFSA. So independent students, these are students who qualify differently for the FAFSA and don't have to have their parents' information on the form. And these are students who are married, which doesn't apply to most of your 18-year-old newly graduating high school seniors. But this is a form that applies to anyone going to college, so that's why we always say that. If you have a child or other dependents who receive more than half of their support from the student, that student can then be independent. If a student is an armed services veteran currently or on active duty, they can be independent. An unaccompanied youth who is homeless or is self-supporting and at risk of being homeless. Please, parents, don't kick your kids out of the house now, just so that they can be independent on the FAFSA. But if they are homeless, then they can be an independent student. At any time since the age of 13, both parents are deceased, the student has been in foster care, or the student is a dependent or ward of the court, then they are considered independent. That's where if you were adopted after the age of 13 from foster care, then you are still an independent student. So this is what the website looks like. When you log on to studentaid.gov, there's this log in and a create account. You're going to click on create an account if you're doing it for the first time to create your FSA ID. Then over here on the left, there's something that says FAFSA form. You're going to kind of click on that, hover over it, and then there's going to be another little menu that pops up, and there'll be a place where you can click you can start your FAFSA. So step one, you've created your FSA ID. Hooray. That is half the battle. All right, so now we're on to step 2 and step 3. Step 2, this is the part that is very, very important. It's a very important change this year. FSA wants to make sure that all families understand that this form legally belongs to the student. So the student needs to start the form. When you create an FSA ID, you have to have a different username and password for each person in your family who has an FSA ID. They all have to use different email addresses, and they all have to use different phone numbers. So the student has to use their cell phone, the parent has to use their cell phone, the other parent should use their cell phone. This is one reason why this is really important is they want to make sure that each person is doing their proper portion of the form. So the student starts the form. Now, I can absolutely guarantee you 100% that the student will not see any of the financial information that the parent puts into the form unless the parent shows it to them. So your financial information will stay yours and private, and your student won't see it. So the student starts the form, and the student will, on that form, that's where they'll put in their student information. They'll put in the 20 colleges, no more than 20 colleges that they might be applying to or they're interested in. They will put in their information, their own student financial information. So if the student has worked, the student has a savings account, if the student has checking, the student has a 529 account. That is where that information will go, on the student's page. This, as a part of the student's page, there will be something called a parent wizard. And the parent wizard is where they will answer questions to help them determine which parent should receive the invitation to do the FAFSA. So this is where it's really important, and this is where you as a parent might want to be really close at hand, because as they're doing that parent wizard, and it gets to the part where it determines which parent the invitation should go to, the student will need to know your legal name, your email address, and your social security number. That's the one thing I'm not a fan of, but that's just the way it is. So you can be right there with them. You put in your email address, your name, and your social security number, and then you will right then immediately get an invitation to that email account saying, hey, your student Susie has started the FAFSA. Please log in and do your part, okay? So then step 4, complete. So that's when you as the contributor, as the parent, you will do your part of the FAFSA. Now, the very first thing when you log in and when your student logs in, puts in their FSA ID and starts the FAFSA, and they will do the 2425 FAFSA. The first question that will be asked is, do you give consent for FSA to electronically get your information, to your tax information from the IRS? There is no data retrieval tool. There is no putting in additional information about you. It will automatically connect once you hit the button, I give consent. This is the exact same computer programming that they're using right now for families, for students who are returning to loan payment process and who are giving the FSA information about their finances so they can get a new payment on their student loans. And it is working. We do know that. I know because I did it myself. So once you give consent, then it will go on to work for your FAFSA. Any information that it pulls over from the IRS will be kind of in a grayed out box, and those numbers will not appear. It'll say transferred from the IRS. So your student won't see it, you won't see it, but you'll know what it is. It comes directly from your 2022 taxes. If you have not filed your 2022 taxes, you have a little extra time, but not much. You want to go ahead and get them filed because that's the numbers that will be used for your FAFSA. So once the parents complete their portion, the students will have a little like portal where they'll be able to see that the students have, it'll check off, yes, students have completed their portion, and each contributor, it will show the different contributors their name, and it'll show yes or no to where they are in the process, if they've completed their portion or not. Yes. It is helpful to have it because there may be a couple questions that it doesn't pull over, but it should. But if it doesn't link to your taxes, it will let you manually enter in your tax information, but it won't be considered a full FAFSA. You won't be Pell eligible or eligible for anything until you work with FSA to get it linked because it'll only be considered a provisional FAFSA. So it is helpful to have your tax information in front of you, and it is helpful for other reasons as well. You want to make sure you have that as you're going through the financial aid process for college in general. I'll talk about that in just a second. But once the student has completed their portion and the parents or the contributors have completed their portions, then the final person who completes that gets to hit the submit button and it gets submitted. And here's another part that I know that parents are not always happy about. Parents know that it's completed. They'll get an email saying your student has submitted their FAFSA. Parents don't get the email that has the SAI, the Student Aid Index, on it. And parents don't get to log in to see the FSS, the FAFSA student submission summary. Because this form legally belongs to your student, that information only appears on your student's portal and only will come to your student's email. So parents, this is a process that you want to be actively involved with your student as they do it and as you do your part. It is not something that you do alone without them, not anymore. They must be involved. So the student will receive that email. So the SAI, that Student Aid Index, why is that number important? Well, because what the schools will do once they get that information from the FAFSA, from your form, they take that number, they take their sticker price, that cost of attendance, they'll subtract out that Student Aid Index, and that will show the financial need that you as a family have. There are colleges that will meet full need and will automatically find somewhere in their endowment fund money to help pay for that. There are colleges that are need aware that will take that number and maybe offer you as a family some additional funds. And then there's colleges that are like, okay, that's a great number. How are you going to pay for that? It varies. So this is where you want to be in conversation with the financial aid department at the college that your student wants to attend, so you can know exactly what they're going to give your child. The SAI, that Student Aid Index, will not change from school to school. That is the number that comes off your FAFSA form. And if you don't fill out a FAFSA, then the colleges will, and you don't fill out any other financial aid form that the college may offer you to fill out, the college will assume that you can pay the full price, and that will be your bill. So step 7, the financial aid department gets the information from the FAFSA for your student, and they will sit on that until admissions says your student Susie has been admitted. Once admissions tells the financial aid department that your student has been admitted, then they will generate what's called a financial aid or a college award letter, and your student will receive that award letter. For those of you who filled out the past FAFSA a long time ago with paper and pen, we look forward to getting those things in the mail. That's no longer the case. A lot of them will send this either by email directly to the student, or they will put it in the student portal that the college gives the student once the student applies to that college. Occasionally, you still will get some in the mail, or sometimes they'll do it both ways. You'll still get a piece of snail mail, which is great, and they'll also be emailed to the student and go into the student portal. So always be looking everywhere for information from colleges: email, student portals, and snail mail. So once you get those award letters, that's the perfect time to sit down and maybe come talk to Dr. Gates again to compare those award letters to help you find which college is giving you the best financial fit for your student and your family. Right. So award letters, you want to compare those side by side. We do have some worksheets that we can use to help you do that. And they kind of look like this. We like to try to put everything in the same column because every award letter you get will look different. Every college puts them out differently. So we like to give you a worksheet where you can put them all side by side in a way that you can compare apples to apples. And they do start coming in. This year, we're going to guess. Colleges have told us that they should start sending out award letters in March. So March and April. All right, so quick reminders, you need to do this every year that your student is in college. Normally it's on October 1st. Next year they promise us it will go back to October 1st. This year it's sometime in December. It generates every type of financial aid, including the ability for your student to take out federal student loans. And you should have your taxes completed before you start this. And you want to file between the time that it opens in December and February 15th for your student to be eligible for the most financial aid. If you file it after February 15th, that's okay. You just may miss out on some financial aid for your student. So 3 more things to note. Hopefully, by making everyone give consent through the process this year, it will lower the number of verification forms that students might need to fill out to verify their student aid that they're eligible for. That's one of the reasons why they've moved to this method. If your student, let me talk about special circumstances a second. Well, we're going to talk about all these 3 things separately. So verification, basically, it's an audit of your FAFSA, and it's just to make sure that you filled it out correctly. You didn't do anything wrong. They just have to randomly spot check. When I first started in this business, they were doing about 30% of all FAFSAs went through what was called a verification process. We're now down to about 10, and they're telling us that this is going to get us below 7%. So we're really hopeful. But if your student gets an email saying they need to go through the verification process, or they have not yet received a financial aid award letter from a college, then double check. This might be why you might have to do that, and we can help you with that process. So the CSS profile, this is for highly selective colleges. If your student is planning on applying to, in the state of Ohio, Case Western, Oberlin, Kenyon, Denison, the Cleveland Institute of Music, then you will be required to do a CSS profile. It is similar to the FAFSA, but yet different. It's on the College Board's website, so you access it through your student's College Board account. Also, if you're thinking about the College of Worcester, the College of Worcester offers their own financial aid form that they will require in addition to the FAFSA, or you can do the CSS profile. So if your student is applying to Worcester and any of the other 5 schools I said in Ohio, then you just need to do the CSS profile. If your student is aiming high for an Ivy League or for any of the other highly selective colleges in the country like Carnegie Mellon, or there's a lot of others, you want to make sure that you need to do this. And basically you can go to the College Board website, click on CSS profile, they list the colleges by state, and you can determine if your college needs it. It is a little more invasive into your family's financial life. Like, for example, if your student applies to Northwestern, they're going to ask you if you have any auto loans, and then they're going to ask you the make and model of your car. They have the right to do that through their financial aid process. It varies from school to school. Most of the times they're just asking you for a little more information about your family's financial situation. I know from firsthand experience that I've seen students who might have a higher EFC actually get their it used to be called EFC, the SAI, they would get it lowered. And so they're not Pell eligible, but they might be eligible for more financial aid from that college. So it is helpful to do, yes. There's 5 that absolutely require it, and that's Case Western in Cleveland, Oberlin, Kenyon, Denison, and the Cleveland Institute of Music. The College of Worcester makes it optional if you do the College of Worcester's financial information. They have an application instead. But if you're doing one of those 5, then adding the College of Worcester onto the list works too. Yeah, so if you go to the College Board's website, go to the CSS profile page, there's a way you can see which colleges require it. Dr. Gates can also share that list with you. But there's usually more highly selective colleges along the lines of case. Like if your student is applying to Duke, then that would require it too. Um, any of the Ivy League schools, they all require it. Special circumstances, these are things that might have happened to your family since you filed your taxes in 2022, and you're like, oh my goodness, my income has dramatically changed. My family's lifestyle is definitely different. All that, I don't have the money that I once had. Then you might need to do what's called a special circumstance appeal. And there's different ways to do that. So if you've had any of these things happen to you, a job layoff, a reduction in your hours worked, a medical, dental, and nursing home expenses that are not covered by insurance that you're paying out of pocket for, a divorce or separation. We know those things change your family's financial situations. Any kind of critical illness or disability in your family that causes a reduction in income, a death to income earner in your family, or basically anyone in your family can affect your income. Income from rental property, court settlement, or alimony that is no longer available. Anything that might appear on your 2022 taxes that is no longer valid for you, then you might have to do what's called a special circumstance appeal. You still have to file your FAFSA using your 2022 taxes, but then what you would do is you would contact the individual schools to let them know about the change in your financial situation, and that school will work with you individually about that situation. There is a place on the CSS profile to make mention of that change, but not on the FAFSA itself. So that's a lot of information. I know it's a lot to digest. Luckily, this recording will be available to you afterwards. Also, you have one of the best College Now advisors that I have ever worked with, in having Dr. Gates. So she can answer lots of questions. She and I text often with questions when people come with a question that we're not sure of. We contact people who work at FSA or other financial aid offices in the community. I can promise you that we can handle your situation no matter what it is. Do you have additional questions for me tonight? Yes.